I'm Jay Rohfritch, and I own Good Books in the Woods, a bookstore here in Spring, Texas, just north of Houston. With me today is Wayne Grant, author and professional hunter. Wayne is the author of two books, 2008's Into the Thorns about leopards, and the brand new, just released Drums of the Morning about lions. Wayne, welcome to Good Books in the Woods.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for inviting me.
Are you ready to have this fun conversation?
Absolutely.
I think it'll be of interest to more than just hunters because of all the conservation elements in your book.
Yeah, I hope so, Jay. I hope I have all the answers that you need.
All right. So you're a fourth generation African born in Bulawayo in the old South Rhodesia.
That's correct. Yeah, on my dad's side, they've been there 4 or 5 generations. So my kids are 6 and my grandkids are 7. But on my mom's side, I think they've been there a bit longer.
Wow. So you were in the Rhodesian Light Infantry.
Correct, yeah.
That was a crack airborne combat unit, roughly like our own Army Rangers or maybe even Special Operations Force.
Yeah, they were Airborne Special Force. It was the 2 best years of my life.
Wow.
I took to the Army. I really, really loved it. And, you know, at that time we believed we were fighting for our country and certainly we were fighting communism. So, yeah, I liked it. I liked my time there. I got a commission. Really, really enjoyed it. Made some good friendships.
All right. How did that military experience help you become a professional hunter?
You know, I went to boarding school when I was only 7.5 years old, so that probably had more about making us independent, you know, being able to live alone, away from home, and have a tough life. Boarding school on the old English way out in the bush was not easy. So as far as the Army goes, yeah, I just think it teaches you man management. We had most of the survival skills already, having grown up in a sort of rural upbringing. So we grew up with pellet guns and 22s and 410s and traps and fishing, and so it all combined really: boarding school, the military, and growing up in the bush.
So you became a professional hunter in 1980 when the Bush War ended?
Correct. At the end of 1980, my first year as a licensed PH was 1981.
And you started your own outfit in 85?
I think it was 85, yes, that's correct.
So you've been doing this for quite a while now.
It'll be my 41st year, I think, as a PH, yeah.
What countries do you operate in right now?
Right now I'm only operating in South Africa and Zimbabwe. I stopped operating year before last, before the COVID, in Tanzania. So I do go still occasionally and guide in Mozambique. So really South Africa, Mozambique and Zimbabwe.
All right. So both of your books are about big cats, obviously, leopards and lions.
That's kind of a focal point,
Yeah.
but my books are about much more than hunting. You know, it's about the political situations in various countries, the ecology of the lion and the leopard,
Absolutely.
and the conservation issues that affect them actually.
Sure. How did you come to specialize in the big cats?
Well, I specialize more in leopard than lion, and the answer is, I think if you like something, piano playing, fishing, whatever it is, you become good at it. And if you're good at something, you tend to like it. So that had something to do with my leopard hunting success, that I liked it. I like to outwit especially the private land cats, which are much, much smarter than wilderness area cats. They've become nocturnal and you have to learn a lot in order to outwit them. And a lot that had to do with that too was the land takeovers in Zimbabwe of, you know, in early 2000. We had to change our business because we lost a lot of our safari areas. So we changed the focus onto leopard hunting to take up that slack of the plains game areas which we had lost. So instead of hunting 3 or 4 leopard a year, we ended up hunting 12 to 15 leopard a year.
Wow. So in Into the Thorns, you talk about the different methods you used or can be used to hunt leopards, right? Bait, lights, hounds, and you talk about which you prefer and why. How do you hunt lion?
Lion, there's also several different ways you can hunt lion. The most popular, the most I won't say easiest, but the first thing you do is put out bait. You want to try and get the lion to come to you. But there's many other ways. I mean, you can track lion in certain areas. In Botswana, it used to be the main way of coming to grips with a lion because the sand was fairly soft and it made tracking a little easier. But you can track lion in wet weather, even on hard ground. So it's a very, very exciting, proactive way to hunt. You can also hunt lion by just watching vultures. You know, if you're not having luck on your baits, you can just park off at lunchtime on a promontory somewhere in the shade, have lunch, and watch for vultures, vulture activity, because they'll drop down to lion kills. Then you sneak in there. Listening for calling is another exciting way. You get up at 3 or 4 in the morning. That's when the lions tend to call more, when the air is cool and still. And when they're calling in the pre-dawn, it's pretty exciting. And you try and get as close as you can on foot to where the lions are calling. Then, of course, when the sun comes up, you should be able to pick up fresh tracks or a kill. So there's various different ways. Of course, you can bump into them on the backs of big buffalo herds because the lion are following the buffalo. So, but baiting is, I think, is the primary way. Calling you can do, I believe, in Burkina Faso and some other places. They can call with a big pipe. But where we come from, calling is not legal except in problem animal control circumstances.
So tell us about the cattle killer at Babati, and forgive me if I mispronounced that.
Babati, yeah. Well, we were hunting in the north of that concession, not far from Tarangire National Park, and the operator that I was hunting through received a call of a cattle killer. It was a long drive, I suppose about 6 or 8 hours south, and it was quite interesting for me to go there. This is in Tanzania we're talking about. It was interesting to go there because Hemingway wrote about hunting in that area, around the Babati area. And it was interesting because I don't think the little town of Babati and other places have changed much since Hemingway was there. You know, all dirt, powdery, red dust roads. But this chap who I was operating through had baited that lion and never shot him and took a lion elsewhere. So we decided to go down there and scout around, and there were reports of that cat still active. As it turned out, he's a very old lion, and that could account for him not being successful on his natural prey and turning to the Maasai cattle as a food source. So anyway, we put up some baits. It's a long, long way from our base camp. So we returned to base camp after a day or two of just roughing it in the bush. No sign of the lion. And then my friend sent his driver down there on about day 7, and he reported that the cat had hit one of the base we put up. So we motored down there, and it turned out to be an exciting hunt because that lion, we bumped into it actually in the middle of the night, not far from the bait, and we were scared we had spooked him. And the next morning on the walk-in to that bait, we encountered where the lion started roaring. So we played a little game of cat and mouse in the thick bush. I mean, he was roaring so close to us you could feel the vibration in your chest and you could hear the phlegm in his throat. It was exhilarating. But we didn't, it was just cat and mouse, and neither the cat nor the mouse won. So we then carried on. We sat that night at a bait that he had hit, and a brush fire had started sometime during the day, and the wind picked up in the evening, and the brush fire suddenly became dangerously close. So when the lion did come in the late evening, the lion itself was looking at the fire. I mean, it was 100, 150 yards away, crackling away and roaring away, actually. So we thought that it would either chase us out of the hide and engulf the grass hide or scare the lion off. But the lion presented himself for a shot, and my client, a friend of mine from Brazil, shot him beautifully. It was certainly a hunt to remember. And no more cattle were taken by the Babati lion cattle killer.
Wow. So in Into the Thorns, you refer to leopards as educated.
Yeah.
So tell us about the most educated lion you've gone after.
Well, a couple offhand. I mean, I have not taken as many lions as I have leopards. You know, probably only maybe 50 or 60 lion trophies, but that's quite a lot when you try and think over the years to think about the smart ones. But a couple come to mind. I mean, lions get educated too. Cats are smart. You know, if they're shot at or escape a trap or poison, chased by dogs, they don't forget. They learn those lessons.
Yeah.
No, I don't hunt with dogs, but those people who do hunt with dogs will tell you that a big problem with a leopard, for example, that eats a bait and is chased by dogs and manages to evade the dogs, he'll eat a bait in the future and he won't stop for 20, 30 miles. He's not laying up nearby. And the same with lion. They learn tricks, you know. So if you get I remember one or two, in fact maybe more, 3 or 4 lions. I used to run the Matetsi Safari Area Unit 2. And we had a couple of lions there who had obviously been shot at or smelt the hunters, whatever the case may be, because they would only eat at night. And you're not allowed to hunt at night on a government concession. So there's several different ways. You'll have to read my book to find out how we outwit them. But basically those were smart lions, that they wouldn't come in the daylight hours. And there's certain things you can do. One of them, I'll slip out the little secret because you'll read it anyway. But one of them is to, if you bait a bait next to really, really thick bush or very thick 8, 10, 12 foot high elephant grass, it's a trick to cut a little avenue from your tree hide into a sleeping position where the lion often sleeps up in the thick stuff, excuse me, waiting for the sun to set. Then after dark he'll come into the bait. So if you're watching his sleeping position and the meat, you can sometimes take him in the thick stuff when he's just waiting for the sun to go down.
So in Into the Thorns, you have a chapter about ethics, which I found fascinating. And so it's been 13 years since you wrote that book. How has your view of hunting ethics changed? Do you see more gray area, less gray area?
The gray areas are still there. Let's see. There's unethical people in any business, not just hunting, you know. So there will always be that shadow that falls over our profession, and unfortunately, those people soil it for everybody. They muddy the waters for everybody. But generally, the associations. You know, if a professional hunter doesn't belong to his country's association, there may be a reason. I'm not saying there is a reason, because some guys just don't need associations and don't like associations and get on ethically with their job. But the good thing about an association is it will police the ethics of its members, and that's a good thing. So I think as the pool, the available wild animals in Africa have decreased and continue to decrease, there will be more infringements on the ethics. To answer your question directly, there's in the countries I operate in, there are quotas, unrealistic quotas issued. And an ethical operator, let's say you're given 4 leopards, and an ethical operator knows that he can't afford to kill 4 leopards every year, because then there'll be no dominant or old males left. So an ethical operator will only take 1 or 2, and he'll have a continued resource to call on. So I think quota, the reality of quota issuing and quota utilization is a bit of a grey area.
In Into the Thorns, you talk about quotas and how problematic it can be, and you talk about leopard conservation in Zimbabwe. You know, this 2007 when you wrote that book, and I found that chapter quite bleak. Has anything improved in Zimbabwe, especially since Mugabe has left?
Yes, Jay. Generally, no. The general answer, no, it's decreasing. The areas that you can hunt on 5, 6, 7, 8, even more of our good concessions have been abandoned. Government concessions, they just abandoned. There's no wildlife left in them. Poached out, overshot. So it's bleak. You know, I think I said in that book that things are not going to be good, and that has come to pass. But there's also light at the end of the tunnel. There's, all the clouds have a silver lining, as it were. The privatization of game conservation areas like Booby Valley Conservancy, Savi Valley Conservancy, and others is growing. It's growing in Mozambique and has been for the last 20 years. And the Booby Valley and Savi Valley in Zimbabwe are absolute success stories. They started with 12 lions, for example, in Booby Valley, which is nearly 1 million acres in extent. It's privately run, privately managed, privately funded, and it's one of the most amazing hunting areas in southern Africa. They started with 12 lions, they've got 500 lions. They started with 3 or 4 buffalo, they've got 9,000 buffalo. All the rhino left in Zimbabwe are basically in the Booby Valley Conservancy. So some areas have regressed terribly, and some new way, a new direction has started. And I think the young guys whose hearts are in conservation will help push that forward, and those people with money and conservation in mind will save our wildlife. I believe that. So the free ranging game has gone down, but the control game, and I'm a firm believer, as much as this might not be liked when we speak about this, but in all countries, fencing is the way forward. You've got to have a boundary. Anybody can cut through a fence, but for example, if you have an open boundary and you get rural people looking for free grazing for their cattle, or you find some poachers in there and say, what are you guys doing here? Oh, no, we're looking for our cattle, or we lost. But with a visible physical fence that you can patrol, that excuse doesn't work. And it helps keep your rhinos, and you can't really fence in an elephant, but you can fence in rhinos, lions, and buffaloes. So areas have to be demarcated, and they have to be fenced, and they have to be privately funded. And I think that's the future of big game hunting in Africa.
So professional hunting obviously requires a tremendous amount of specific expertise, but it's also a people business. Can you talk about some of your best staff members?
Yeah, professional hunters are like any business in the world. You got short ones and tall ones and fat ones and thin ones, and guys who don't talk much and guys who talk too much, and guys who don't tell the truth, and those who are absolutely down the line. So as far as being a people person, it's more people management than being able to converse. And likewise clients, hunting clients, sporting hunters, sportsman hunters I like to call them, will gravitate to a kind of personality which they prefer. A sporting hunter may go with a guy that he doesn't hit it off with, but the beauty of our profession is there's so many of us that if he looks hard enough, he will find a guy that likes to drink or doesn't like to drink, or likes to walk or doesn't like to walk, who knows the history of the area. So being a people person is too broad a description, but man management and people management is important. We have to be able to manage our staff, our trackers, our anti-poaching teams, our cooks, our bottle washers, our tent staff. It's running a little army, actually. The bigger concessions you might have, Booby, for example, has hundreds of employees because it's a 1 million acre concession with 5 permanent camps. My business is a small business. I only have 6 employees. So, and you strive to find the good men and keep them.
So what advice would you have for someone like me? I've been to Africa twice, Zimbabwe once, Tanzania once, both photo safaris.
Yep.
What advice would you have for someone who's interested in Africa, perhaps has been there, has never done a hunting safari, but would like to?
The social media now has made things a lot complicated, of course, in some areas, but it's opened up the communication a lot easier. When I started, it was just the old wind-up telephones where we were in the bush, and that was it. And then came faxes, which we thought were wonderful, And because I don't type, I used to handwrite all my faxes and communicate with clients that way. Now, of course, on WhatsApp and Twitter and Facebook and everything else, you can speak to someone in northern Alaska in a second. So the reason I mention that is it's a lot easier these days to do your research. So you can narrow it down, what kind of animal you're looking for, what kind of physical shape you're in, and once you've done that, there's various hunt sites where you can interact with other hunters and say, "What I've heard about this guy, Joe Blogs. What's he like?" And you can look at 20 references or 30 references very quickly. So that's my advice to you: is research. Find the guy you like online, meet with him face to face if you can, and then it's a lot easier to make up your mind than it was 30 years ago. You had to rely in those days more on agents. But now you can interact directly with anybody in the world, really.
So what is your go-to campfire story? When you're out there, in the bush, under the Southern Cross, what's your go-to story?
There's just too many over 40 years, there's just too many stories. Yeah. Some good, some bad, some tragic, some funny.
What's the one that you were in the most personal danger?
Well, there's a lot of those too, Anybody who's been a combat soldier will tell you that probably was the most dangerous time of his life. But in 41 years of professional hunting, we've had near disasters in aircraft, overloaded, barely making it out, traffic. Actually, when clients ask me this, what's the most dangerous thing I'm likely to encounter in Africa, black mambas, bandits, this and that, it's traffic. In many of the countries we operate in, I try not to drive at night. It's the most dangerous thing in Africa is the traffic. Not a lot of traffic, because where there's a lot of traffic on a highway in Joburg is not that dangerous. But the rural roads and the way that people drive in Africa, potholed roads, it's dangerous. And I've had quite a few of those instances. Back shortly after the Rhodesian War ended, some clients, myself and a friend, were ambushed by dissidents, and there was some grey area there. Actually, were they dissidents or were they government troops? And we were very lucky to get away with our lives there. 20-something bullets went through our 2 cars. No one was hurt. So apart from that ambush, various, buffalo charges, lion charges, elephant charges, leopard charges. I've had 7 point-blank leopard charges. 6 leopard charges and 7 lion charges, and they're terrifying. Lion charges and buffalo charges are terrifying. So they're all dangerous. Unfortunately, people in our profession are killed every year. Aircraft by elephant, by lion. It's a dangerous profession.
Yeah, when I was reading Into the Thorns, you mentioned the specific distance that you try to wait for a leopard charge, and I can't remember the exact number, but it was so minuscule that...
It's point blank, because you only have one shot. Sometimes in various countries you can call for help, and you should call for help, because you don't want to get your tracker or anybody else hurt. So if you can get a couple of friends, one is best. You don't want to complicate the issue on a leopard hunt, because the more people in the bush, the more chance you have that someone's going to get injured. So unfortunately, in places like Tanzania, where you're way out in the wilderness, you can't call for help, and you're on your own. So if you're on your own with a dangerous charging 450-pound lion, it's one shot. If you have a double, you may get 2 off. So if you're going to shoot a charging animal, in a buffalo, you cannot turn him. You have to hit him in the brain. A charging lion, a charging elephant, you can turn them with a bad shot. Leopard attacks you from point blank, so turning him is out of the question. But a buffalo, you've got to be dead on. You've got to shoot him in the brain. And to shoot an animal, a running animal with a bobbing head and uneven ground, it's point blank. And that's, some people call point blank 10 yards, some people call it 5. On a leopard, I'll shoot him at probably about between 5 and 8 yards, sometimes 2 or 3 feet depending on the bush when he comes. But on a buffalo, I like to shoot him at about 10 yards at the closest, because even though you brain shoot him, he's still coming at a rate, and he'll probably fall on you or fall on somebody. So it depends on the thickness of the bush and openness and ruggedness of the terrain. But point blank is close range.
Well, that's very impressive. But reading Into the Thorns, I was struck by how much planning goes into your hunts. You start planning at least a week before the client even arrives, sometimes far more.
Yeah, far more.
And you have large wall maps in both of your headquarters locations.
Yeah, we did that just to give us a better idea of what leopards we have on our properties. It's become, over the years, I mean, remember when we first started leopard hunting, you could shoot any leopard, and any leopard was a great trophy. And then came you could only shoot males. Now they're trying to, and it's a good thing in my opinion, now they're trying to regulate the shooting of male leopard to 3 or 4 years, not younger. So the days of just putting on an old spotlight and banging away are over. It's becoming more refined, more conservation orientated, therefore your planning has to be more exact. How many big male leopards over 3 years old do we have on our area? And once you've got that information throughout a season, you won't waste time baiting in a place where that leopard doesn't go. So it takes a lot of planning, yeah.
One of the things you said about conservation in the book was, you know, the customs people in New York, they can't tell the difference between a male skin and a female skin of a leopard. So yeah, the regulation is you can't.
Well, I'm not sure about that. You know, I don't know who looks at the skins when they arrive in New York, but in Zimbabwe, and it could be other countries too. South Africa shut down leopard hunting, and they're reopening it to a certain degree. Those animals are checked before they leave the country. Samples are taken, DNA samples are taken, hair, blood, fat. They age them, photographs of the underneath, inside of the teeth. No, like I say, I can't speak for where they go to, but they can't leave the country unless they're the right animal. Even Tanzania, they very detailed look at the lion trophies, and if they're under 6 years old, they don't get them home. You don't export them.
Oh, so is that a change in the last 15 years?
Yes. Yes. It's changing very rapidly. And these restrictions are for the better, you know. These are all good. Hunts are going to be less successful. You know, there's just not that many. People all come over and want a great big tom leopard. Sure. It's like the old days, people that would like a 100-pound elephant, but they're not there. You know, there's more people are going to go home without a trophy now than before. And is that a bad thing? You know, you have to ask yourself, and people are all different, of course, but are you hunting for the skin? You can buy a faux leopard skin in a shop. Yes, it's yours, it's the old love of your trophy, but you're also hunting for the experience. So if you went on two or three leopard hunts, you would hope to get your old big male tom leopard, but it might not happen. You know, back in the day, you would have a big old female and be perfectly happy with it. But your success rate now is down, but the amount you hunt and your enjoyment of real wild Africa in the wilderness, you're experiencing more than the guy who would come spend 2 days, bang the leopard and go home. So is it a bad thing? No. You're conserving the leopard and probably getting a lot more hunting out of it. Are you getting the trophy as easily? No, I'm afraid not.
So you've been a professional hunter for 41, 42 years.
41 years. This will be my 41st year.
So what does retirement look like for a professional hunter? What's next for you?
Yeah, look, I mean, some operators do make some good money. Good businessman in any business will make some good money, but this is not the game to get rich or make money.
Yeah, books either.
Retirement, I don't know many professional hunters that can put up their feet and say, I'm retired, and have money to live on for the rest of their life. That doesn't happen. They're either farmers, entrepreneurs of some kind, and maybe they retire that way, but you don't retire on money made from hunting. You're there for the love of your job, conservation. One of the early philosophers, I can't remember who it was, said if you find a job you love, you never have to work another day in your life. So that, I think, is the enrichment you get from a job like mine, not money.
So no retirement.
Not in the foreseeable future.
I'm with you there. I'll be 75 and selling books.
Well, I mean, we probably, I'll be 61 this year, and luckily I'm in good physical condition, so I'm still hunting. But if I get hurt or injured in some way, that could change, and then a lot of old hunters struggle to make ends meet. So I think I do know quite a few. Look, as I say, there's professional hunters who hunt part-time, and there's professional hunters that's their only job. So if you're careful and invest wisely when you are making money, we made our best money in the 80s, even though our little daily rates for hunts in those days were $300. $300 a day was worth something in 1982 or 1983. Whereas $300 today, it's laughable. It doesn't even buy you a warthog. So those days, luckily, we generated some decent money and bought property. Bought my first home at 27 years old. That was doable in those days. So it just depends when you've entered the game and what your expectations are, and how much hunting you get under your belt. There's a hell of a lot of hunters out there now, and a lot of hunters I don't think generate 100 days, whereas in the day, and even now, I'm doing probably 150 days at least a year. So there's a lot of variation in where you hunt and how you hunt, and if you have another job. I would advise any PH to have another qualification or another job as well as hunting.
So you'll continue to hunt 150 days a year for the foreseeable future?
We'll see.
Well,
I hope so.
Let's hope so. People will read your book and they'll want to hire you.
Yeah, I hope that happens. I'm leaning, like all older hunters or people that have grown up in the wild, I'm leaning more of my interest and love and dedication into conservation of wildlife. And hunting, of course, is a major tool for conservation. There's no doubt about that. It's not in dispute. But I would like to spend my later years as a professional hunter doing more for conservation than I have done in the past.
So Wayne, your new book, brand new book, Drums of the Morning. People can buy it from me, of course, Good Books in the Woods.
Of course.
On my website.
You have a lovely collection here, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. Goodbooksinthewoods.com is where you can find it. So Wayne, please tell us something about this new book.
Jay, as I said, the focal point is lion hunting, but it covers lion conservation issues. And my main agent said to me when we came together with this plan that don't avoid the elephant in the room. So I've had to cover things like the canned lion issue in South Africa. I've had to cover issues like Cecil the lion in Zimbabwe. So it's about not only about track 'em down, shoot 'em up lion hunting. It's all the conservation issues that are joined, that go hand in glove with lions. There's a little repetition in my book. I touched briefly on my school years, but didn't elaborate like I did in the leopard book. But one new chapter in my new lion book is on the Rhodesian War, because so many clients, we get them around the fire and they hear there was a war or the land takeovers or this or that. They're very interested in the history of our country and why we fought a war, and a lot of people don't realize how strong and what a threat communism was back in the 60s and 70s in that part of the world. So I've done a chapter on my time in the army, which I did not do in the leopard book. But otherwise, it's pretty much the same. You know, I've got a chapter on my staff. Some of my staff have passed away tragically since the leopard book, so I've added that in to the staff chapter. But it's very similar. The production of the book, it looks the same. It's a big book, you know, 640 pages or something. Lots of pictures for those who don't really like to read that much. But that's about it. Yeah, it's not only shoot 'em up lion hunting, it's conservation issues too.
Sounds like a great book. Into the Thorns was a wonderful book. I'm looking forward to Drums in the Morning.
Thank you very much.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, thank you.